It's called the H5N1 virus, a primitive piece of genetic material so small it can barely be seen under the most powerful microscopes. Like all flu viruses, it is constantly evolving, and every day scientists record the latest changes as it moves silently around the globe in the bellies of birds. It has infected the waterfowl now migrating the flyways over Southeast Asia. This is the front line in the battle against avian flu, where the most cases have been identified and the most people have died. Ducks and geese have passed it along to domestic poultry, and humans have gotten it from sick birds. So far, the virus can't pass easily from human to human, but a single deadly mutation could change that and trigger the deaths of tens of millions of people.
So that clip you just saw was from December 4th, 2005. I have a little bit more of that clip from 60 Minutes that I'm going to play, but before I do that, I wanted to thank you for watching the Citizens Report. My name is William Donahue. For today's show, I thought it would be appropriate to just cover basically the history of the bird flu since about 2005. That's when government started getting involved. I think the first case of bird flu in human, or just in general, was detected in 1959. So in 2005, George Bush suggests military enforced quarantines for avian flu. The United States may need to quarantine regions of the country if localized outbreaks of pandemic flu occur. U.S. President George Bush said today during a press conference in Washington, D.C., I think it's an important debate for Congress to have. I noticed the other day, evidently, some governors did not like it. So what he's talking about is at the time in Southeast Asia, there was like a bird flu outbreak, and it was spreading through migratory birds, as you just saw. This article is kind of saying the same thing. Military quarantine for bird flu. President Bush, increasingly concerned about a possible avian flu pandemic, revealed Tuesday that any part of the country where the virus breaks out could likely be quarantined and that he is considering using the military to enforce it. So the clip that you saw was recorded 2 months after these articles came out, and what you're going to see with the rest of the clip is the response to this outbreak and the United Nations working to come up with a solution. And then the next couple articles are going to play into that. So here's the clip.
Time is the essence.
Dr. Margaret Chan is the World Health Organization's chief of pandemic influenza in Geneva. She calls it a warning signal from nature.
For the first time in history, we are seeing a pandemic unfolding in front of our eyes.
No one has more experience with H5N1 than Dr. Chan. She was director of health in Hong Kong when the first outbreak occurred there in 1997.
This is a virus that affects mostly birds. It has killed fewer than 100 people. Yet you say it is the most serious health threat facing the world. Why?
We are seeing very worrying signs. The geographical spread of this virus, number one, and number two, it has extended beyond the usual sort of poultry sector. It is infecting cats, it's causing death in tigers, and so on and so forth. Now, we are getting all these signals, and we are tracking the changes of the virus.
What is it that concerns you so much about this particular virus?
If you look at the disease it causes in human being, it's very severe, with a very high, fatality rate. More than about half of the people infected died. We have not seen anything quite like it. And also, this virus caused unprecedented spread in the animal sector. And we have never seen this in the entire history of mankind.
Mr. Chairman.
So then in 2006, the U.S. military, State Department, to prepare avian flu plan. In the wake of the first human deaths from avian flu in Turkey, U.S. military officials are meeting with their counterparts from the State Department to come up with a plan. Dozens of officials from various branches of the service and agencies in Europe are gathered at a 4-day conference in Stuttgart, Germany, to prepare EUCOM to respond in the event of a pandemic. It is believed that migratory birds are spreading the disease, and cases reportedly have been found in several Eastern European countries as well. So 2005, they're planning this response. In 2011, novel reassortant highly pathogenic avian influenza viruses in domesticated ducks, China. So this study, their affiliates are Yangzhou University College of Veterinary Medicine and Yangzhou People's Republic of China. So it says, when mice were inoculated with a sublethal dose of 10 EID, each influenza subtype H5N5, that's the bird flu virus, was able to replicate without prior adaptation. The highest virus levels were detected in the mouse lungs. The viruses were able to spread to the brain and heart. Furthermore, influenza 008 H5N5 was isolated from the spleen and liver, and influenza 031 H5N5 was detected in the kidney. So they're introducing bird flu into mice, which mice tend to have a similar system with humans. So a lot of times they'll do mouse research and then project the results based on a mouse's lifespan and a human lifespan to see how things would affect humans. Mice have the same or similar tolerance to toxicity as human beings. So testing out how adaptable this virus is when introduced to new things, considering the endemicity that clade 2, 3, and 4 subtype H5N1 viruses have gained in China since 2005, it is plausible that subtype H5N1 viruses have provided the backbone for generating the novel subtype H5N5 viruses instead of the opposite gene flow. So right here they're saying that it's possible that H5N5 was created from H5N1, different variants of the virus, and as you can see, they're messing around with what animals they can get this virus to infect. And then this article from The Intercept. I'm going to get back to this article because what you're about to see in this clip is the news coverage of what was going on at the time, and then this is from The Intercept from 2022, but hindsight is 2020, so they're talking about this time period where this study is taking place, this clip you're about to see is taking place, and they break down everything that was going on in the science community surrounding bird flu. So here's the clip.
For the first time, the U.S. government is asking scientists to censor their research on the deadly bird flu virus. They want laboratories to not publish details on how they mutated the H5N1 avian flu virus to the point where it could be transferred to humans. The government fears that information could be used as a bioweapon. Scientists say they are working to comply with the request. Since the virus was first detected in 1997, more than half of the 600 people infected have died.
So this is part 3 of a series of articles from The Intercept. Lab that created risky avian flu had unacceptable biosafety protocols. Someone finally convinced me to do something really, really stupid, virologist Ron Faucher told Scientific American in 2011. Faucher of Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam and another scientist, Yoshiro Kawaka of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, had separately tweaked H5N1 viruses and influenza that primarily infected birds in a way that made it spread more easily to ferrets. H5N1 is a prime pandemic candidate, and ferrets are often used as proxies for human in flu experiments. When word got out that the two scientists were planning to publish papers detailing their experience, making a blueprint available to the world, the outcry was extreme. New York Times ran an editorial titled "An Engineered Doomsday." The backlash was so severe that in 2012, Kawaka, Fauci, and other prominent flu scientists voluntarily agreed to pause the transmissibility work. Early on, Fauci told Science that he had created probably one of the most dangerous viruses you can make. But after controversy broke out and Science communicator Peter Sandman had written, Fauci and his supporters shifted to downplaying the danger. So then, Kawaka's lab accidents involving lab-generated flu viruses were seen just 1 week apart. The accidents, a spill and a needle prick, carried a low-risk infection. So the Intercept obtained over 5,500 pages of NIH documents, including 18 years of laboratory incident reports detailing hundreds of accidents. Lack of clear standards. Documents, which numbered over 5,500 pages, covered the years 2004 to 2021 and paint a picture of various animal bites, escapes, needle sticks, equipment malfunctions, and even some human infections. They threaten the Institute enforcement actions, including suspending or terminating Kawaka's grant. The agency's reaction to the accidents was more extreme than in any other instance examined by The Intercept. After many other accidents, including for some involving potential pandemic pathogens, the same bureaucrats responded with brief thank you emails. In a few cases, they asked for corrective actions. In no other instance did they threaten to withhold funding. So this was almost a very bad pandemic outbreak, which resulted in a research moratorium on modified H5N1 viruses. A year-long voluntary memorandum on research involving transmissible H5N1 viruses ended today with a letter from a group of scientists that supports resuming the work in countries that have addressed the biosafety issues involved. The research pause was designed to allow countries and the scientific community to discuss biosecurity and biosafety issues that were raised by the publication of two controversial H5N1 papers, thus acknowledging that the aims of the voluntary moratorium have been met in some countries and are close to being met in others. We declare an end to the voluntary moratorium on avian flu transmission studies. So, even though there was almost this massive spillover, they want to end this moratorium. Scientists seek ethics review of H5N1 gain-of-function research. So this was in January that they ended the moratorium, and then in March, now they're saying that there's ethics concerns about the research. And then November 24th of 2013, FDA approves GSK's bird flu vaccine for national stockpile. The Food and Drug Administration said on Friday it has approved a vaccine made by GlaxoSmithKline plc for use in the event of an H5N1 bird flu epidemic. It is the first H5N1 vaccine approved in the United States to contain adjuvant or booster that turbocharges the body's immune response to the vaccine. European regulators have approved it under the brand name Pumarix. Data shows that children in England who received a similar adjuvant vaccine, Pandemrix, during the 2009-2010 H1N1 swine flu epidemic had a 14-fold heightened risk of developing narcolepsy, a chronic and potentially debilitating sleep disorder that can cause hallucinations, daytime sleepiness, and a cataplex, a form of muscle weakness precipitated by strong emotion. So they ended the moratorium, they did the research, they came out of it with a vaccine, and then here, this is from PubMed 2015. A novel reassortant H5N5 virus bind to human type receptors as a factor in pandemic risk. This is a study done. Highly pathogenic avian influenza A HPAI H5N1 virus poses a serious pandemic threat due to their virulence and high mortality in humans, and their increasingly expanding host range and significantly ongoing evolution could enhance their human-to-human transmissibility. Here we tested the receptor binding properties of these reassortant viruses, and then we used guinea pigs as a mammalian model to examine the replication and transmission of these reassortant viruses. So a reassortant virus is another form of genetic exchange that can occur in segmented viruses, viruses that have a genome split into multiple segments. Reassortment only occurs when multiple viruses infect the same cell and replicate their progeny segments in the cytoplasm, in the same cytoplasm. So then they have reassortant vaccines. Are manufactured by taking advantage of natural ability of viruses with segmented genomes to reassort when more than one strain is affecting the host cell. So those are some terms to pay attention to. One factor that limited transmission of avian viruses in humans is the receptor specificity of HA. Therefore, we examined the receptor binding specificity of reassortant viruses using goose red blood cells that were treated with A23 specific sialidase. Theoretically, the sialidase digestion should abolish hemagglutination of A23 specific viruses. So again, we're seeing them use mammals to replicate human genetics and human immune system, and they're specifically trying to figure out what is the way that the virus enters the cell, how it infects. So then in 2017, framework for guiding funding decisions about proposed research involving enhanced potential pandemic pathogens. February 8th, 2019, science.org. Controversial experiments that could make bird flu more risky, poised to presume. 2 gain-of-function projects halted for more than 4 years have passed new U.S. review process. So again, they're picking it up, the same research. Dual-use research of concern and bird flu questions and answers, 2019. So 2019, this is from the CDC, an official CDC article, and they're saying that the dual-use research is a concern because you're researching to find out whether or not the virus can be cured and how you could create a vaccine and all that stuff. But on the other hand, you're isolating certain parts of the virus, and you're isolating it and basically creating a roadmap to making a bioweapon. So if you do the research, there's a potential risk that someone could gain the knowledge and then use that to, do biowarfare. So, researchers work to develop bird flu vaccine to contain future outbreaks, which they say develop bird flu vaccines, but they already had bird flu vaccines in 2013, I believe. So, since being detected in South Carolina in mid-January, highly pathogenic avian flu influenza, HPAI, has spread through commercial and backyard flocks along the East Coast and Midwest. On March 14th, the first case of bird flu, as it's commonly called, was detected in Wisconsin in a large chicken flock located in Jefferson County. This isn't the first influenza outbreak that the United States has seen, and it likely won't be the last. Adele Talat, a professor of pathobiological sciences at the School of Veterinary Medicine. So the vaccine technology he's implementing, called nanovaccine, uses tiny particles smaller than the width of a human hair to deliver immunity by sending pathogen-like signals to cells. So that could be our reassortant vaccines. They take advantage of viruses' natural ability to basically adapt to things. So if there was a new strain of H5N1 or whatever they're calling it here, HPAI, they could use the adaptability process of the virus to vaccinate people for the most current strains. And then $46.3 million award for more bird flu vaccines. CSL Seqirus today announced it was selected by the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority to deliver one bulk lot of H5N8, an Astrakhan antigen, to the U.S. government. While the likelihood of sustained human-to-human transmission of bird flu is low, according to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention and World Health Organization, there have been reported a small number of human cases of avian influenza, including one in the U.S. in April of 2022, a case in Ecuador in January of 2023, and Chile of March 2023. So a case of influenza in the U.S. in April of 2022. But then in 2024, they say, first human case of U.S. bird flu in Texas detected after contact with infected dairy cattle. So they're saying it might be the first time it jumped from a cow to a human, but this headline is deceptive, basically leaving you to think that it was the first case of human bird flu. A person in Texas became ill with bird flu after contact with infected dairy cattle, state officials reported Monday. What do we know about the risks of bird flu outbreak? An outbreak of bird flu is affecting dairy cows in the U.S. There's a heap of unknowns right now. This is from Richard Webby, who we saw in 2013 was one of the people who wanted to end the moratorium on the gain-of-function research that was being done. Now he's saying there's a bunch of unknowns. I'm sure that, like it says here, he was involved in this virus for a very long time. The first case of H5N1 bird flu strain emerged in North America among wild migratory birds in 2021 and soon spread to poultry farms. Not true. The particular version of H5N1 virus is teaching us that some of the things that we thought we knew about bird flu were wrong, Webby says. The current outbreak has affected many new wild bird species and persisted for longer than previous ones. The virus has also popped up more often in mammals, both in the wild and on farms, and at times led to a wave of infections and death. While still in its early days, Webby says the genetic sequencing collected from infected cattle hasn't turned up anything that immediately screams this virus has changed, and that's why these cows are getting infected. Sequencing of the virus in the Texas patient did show minor changes, including one mutation associated with viral adaptation to mammals that's appeared in other human cases, according to reports from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. So the next article I have, U.S. could vaccinate a fifth of Americans in bird flu emergency. This is April 20th, 2024. H5N1 has long been feared for its potential to cause human pandemic, and the U.S. government has spent billions of dollars preparing for the threat of pandemic influenza outbreak since the early 2000s, working with GSK, CSL subsidiaries CSL Seqirus and Sanofi to develop vaccines, build up a stockpile, and line up manufacturing capacity that could be switched on in an emergency. What we know about the latest bird flu outbreak in the U.S., Dr. Mandy Cohen, that the good news is that it's not a new strain of the virus, Cohen added. This is known to us and we've been studying it. And frankly, we've been preparing for avian flu for 20 years. The bird flu virus drawing attention today, type A H5N1, was first identified in 1959. So that's the end of the articles I have. Now, just like these articles are saying, there was a recent outbreak of H5N1, avian bird flu, whatever you want to call it. They've come out with this recently, the U.S. government Global Health Security Strategy 2024. So I covered this on my last show, basically signed by Joe Biden, talking about pandemic responses. And then it's talking about specifically having set up the legal framework, the preparedness and response policies, the research and development, national health systems, your vaccines, your masks, your social distance, your quarantine, funding and finance mechanisms, surveillance and early warning systems, and global and regional operations. So in the face of a well-foreseen possible pandemic, we now have all the structure to have a pre-planned response to it. And given that this is the election season, I think that this is something major to play into everything that's coming up. And I'll have more on this as it develops, but that's all I have right now. I hope that you enjoyed this breakdown of the bird flu, and please come back and see more shows. Please like and subscribe to my videos and my YouTube channel. Get this information out there. It's important that people know what's going on with the upcoming election season. And I thank you for watching, and have a good night.
Thank you for watching The Citizens Report with William Donahue. On this show, we search for knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of the world around us through the lens of an American citizen.